Never date a person with extreme red flags because it literally can be the death of you. Today's story is an example of that. Olympic marathon runner named Rebecca Cheptegei was murdered by being set on fire by her ex-boyfriend right after competing in the Paris Olympics. In this video, I'm going to share the details of what happened and 3 lessons that we can learn from this to improve our relationship life and our dating life. You ready? Okay. What happened? The tragic death of this Olympian is a heartbreaking and infuriating story of domestic violence. Rebecca tragically passed away on September 5th, 2024 after being doused in petrol gas by her ex-boyfriend and set on fire. The ex-boyfriend was named Dickson Ndiema outside of her home in Eldoret, Kenya. This is so sad and gruesome. She was on her way home from church. And who does some awful stuff like this? I'm glad she was with God in her last moments. The incident occurred just 1 month after Rebecca competed in the Paris 2024 Olympics, where she placed 44th in the marathon. Go Rebecca. And this was her first time at the Olympics, and she killed it. Sadly, this violence caused burns to over 80% of her body, and she shortly died after due to her injuries. Days later, her ex, Dickson, also died because he suffered burns to 40% of his body while setting her on fire as well. So God and karma took care of her and brought her justice. Thousands of people in her home country celebrated her amazing life and buried her recently. Here's a photo of the beautiful ceremony, including many activists who helped bring renewed attention to the ongoing gender-based violence that's happening in Kenya and continues to happen. And so Rebecca isn't the only female athlete that something like this has happened to. Rebecca is the 3rd female runner specifically killed in Kenya in just the last few years, since 2021. This is a problem, and I hope that women and people advocate for the government and the police to protect women. The Kenya government is unfortunately not doing enough, but they did do a small gesture due to the high news coverage and press that they were getting for this. They've pledged to give Rebecca's 2 children $13,000 each. So hopefully that this is a start, but I hope that this actually gets the government to enact laws that protect victims instead of giving their children money after the fact because the system, the police, and the government didn't do their job in the first place. Okay. So who was this a-hole Dickson that killed her? Dickson was a broke and struggling taxi driver and an unsuccessful athlete who aspired to be an Olympian just like her. She had broken up with her ex, Dickson, months ago, but she continued to face many threats and physical abuse from him after the breakup. He would show up to their house multiple times, and she reported him to the police multiple times, and the last time she reported him was a few days before he actually killed her. Unfortunately, these reports and pleas were ignored by the police, and unfortunately, in many African countries, including where my family is from, Nigeria, domestic violence is normalized and not taken seriously enough. It's allowed and it's modeled by men of multiple generations and many families that this is okay. And if you have money, for example, you can basically pay off the police, unfortunately, due to these corrupt governments and societies. And I hope that this renewed attention on this major issue encourages the government of Kenya to do something about this, because women shouldn't have to die for the police to show up and do something now and to investigate. Apparently, before Dickson died after killing Rebecca, the police was going to charge him for her murder, but God took care of him. Why did this happen? Why did Dickson kill her? The suspected reason that this murderer killed her is because Rebecca had been the primary breadwinner, supporting not only her children, her 2 children, but all of her extended family, and also funding his lifestyle. Dickson met Rebecca in 2020, and he moved into her house immediately with her 2 children in Kenya while she trained for the Olympics. And after 4 years of dating and domestic violence, Rebecca finally had enough and left his ass. But Dusty Dickson couldn't have that. He was resentful of her success and her independence, and it appears that he got even more resentful when she finally made it to the Olympics, and he did this just a month after she competed and did so well. He got especially mad because that was his sugar mama. She basically covered all of his bills and took care of him, and he felt entitled to her earnings and property, according to reports. How dare he think that he owns her stuff after 4 years of dating? He ain't her husband. He was a low down, dusty sugar baby. And allegedly, he kept coming to her house trying to take her house from her because in his crazy mind, he thought that he owned that house because they were together and he's the man of the house, quote unquote, but don't pay a bill. So rest in peace, Rebecca. This is an absolute mess. What can we learn from this? I have 3 lessons. Lesson number 1, never ignore red flags. Rebecca, unfortunately, ignored many red flags that were obvious to everyone. One of the red flags was that he was financially unstable and couldn't pay the bills when she met him. Red flag number 2 is he was extremely jealous of her success early on. Red flag number 3, he was extremely controlling and misogynistic. The 4th red flag is that he was allegedly abusive for their entire relationship before and after. And it's sad that she stayed in the relationship for multiple years with someone who was beating her around her 2 children. So unfortunate. We get to learn from Rebecca and see that piping hot red flags like this, we get to run for the hills, not stay with it. This is a big example that we cannot date people who don't have their shit together, especially if you have children. Being with someone unstable financially, emotionally, or spiritually is a costly decision that will always have consequences. And we can't ignore reality and see potential, which I suspect she did, because the only way that I could see this superstar being with someone so messed up is if she saw potential in this man or the version she wanted to see in this man. And we have to accept people for where they are and who they are, because in many cases, people usually don't change that much unless something drastic happens. And no amount of controlling them or trying to fit them into the mold that you want them to be will ever work. So when we're dating, we have to ask ourselves, if this person stays the same as they are right now and make no changes, can I see myself with them in the long term? If the answer is no, we get to not proceed with that relationship. I also suspect that Rebecca may have had low self-esteem and low self-worth to tolerate and accept a person with such obvious and terrible red flags. We can only assume this, but this is a lesson for us all to never date or enter a relationship if we have extremely low self-esteem or low self-worth or low boundaries. Because in many cases, we attract awful people who aren't good for us for the long term. When we don't know our value, we will accept anyone or anything in our life to not be alone and tolerate dumb, unacceptable behavior. Lesson number 2, heal to avoid abuse. Let me say it again. Heal to avoid abuse. A relationship is never worth your life. Healing and doing internal work is the most effective antidote to attracting and being in abusive relationships. In simple terms, more healing means less chance of abuse. Amen? Rebecca's case is an example that we can never rely on the court system, the police, or the government to protect us fully. The only real protection we have from abuse is doing the internal work so that we avoid being in the situation like this in the first place, or getting out of a situation like this as fast as possible. As a domestic violence survivor who has done almost a decade of therapy and personal development work to heal from my past traumas, I have seen directly in my life that as I've healed, I no longer attract abusive or narcissistic people. They don't stick to me. I mean, I'm attractive, so I attract everyone, but those type of characters don't like me anymore because they know that they can't get away with the stuff that I used to do. I have a high self-esteem. I have high worth. I have boundaries now. So they stay away from people like me. When we have low self-esteem, low boundaries, narcissistic and evil humans see that and take advantage of that. They can smell us like a shark in blood. Like they can smell it. They can see the insecurity. They can see that you're vulnerable and take advantage of that. I've also worked with dozens of domestic violence victims as a life coach, and I can tell you that I've never met a person who's been in an abusive relationship who has had a healthy, high self esteem, high self worth, or has healed their past traumas, healed their attachment issues, or healed their daddy and mommy issues. So the antidote is to have those high self esteem, to heal those parental issues and daddy and mommy issues, to work on ourselves so we become nasty and so that the narcissist runs when they see someone like us. Another benefit of healing our past is that healing also helps us avoid becoming an abuser ourselves. Most people who become abusers usually have been abused themselves, unfortunately. Hurt people hurt other people. And so if we heal our hurts, we won't hurt other people. So I encourage all of us to get therapy, go into coaching, or do a personal development program that's geared to our issues and our struggles so that we don't have to experience the same predictable cycle, because it really is predictable. Lesson number 3, forgive and move on. This man, Dixon, obviously could not move on and forgive Rebecca for leaving him, even though he deserved it. But we can learn from this lunatic, because he's an example that when we don't forgive and move on, it creates resentment, anger, shame that can eat you inside. And if you're also a person who hasn't done the internal work to heal your past childhood and adulthood traumas, it can cause you to do terrible things to people. And it's important for us to heal so that we don't bleed on people who didn't hurt us. That's a quote I heard that was so amazing. And anyone can be an abuser. Women can be abusers. Queer people can be abusers. Everybody can. Those are the lessons, guys. Lesson number 1, never avoid red flags. 2, heal to avoid abuse. And 3, forgive and move on. Like and subscribe for more lessons and inspiring content like this. My mission is to help you on your growth journey. Watch one of my next suggested videos below. I'll see you again next time.